thin cry drifted through the January storm, almost lost beneath the roar of the wind. Two German Shepherd puppies lay half buried in the snow behind an old market in Silver Ridge, their fur frozen stiff, their tiny bodies fading with every breath. They had no strength left to call for help. No one was supposed to come. But miles away, a Navy SEAL named Noah Carter followed a lonely mountain road, carrying the weight of old battles and wounds no one could see. He was not searching for redemption. He was simply trying to outrun the memories that refused to let him sleep. Yet when those faint whimpers reached him, when he saw the two fragile lives trembling beside the broken crate, something inside him shifted. The man who had closed his heart for years felt it stir again. Not with fear, not with duty, but with a quiet, unexpected courage that would change everything. What happened next is a reminder that healing often begins in the most broken places, and sometimes love returns in the smallest, coldest moments of our lives. Before we start this journey, tell me where you were watching from. And if stories of hope matter to you, share this video, leave a comment, and subscribe so more hearts can find their way home. The whimper in the snow of Silver Ridge. Snow moved through Silver Ridge like a cold tide swallowing the world. January had a way of tightening its grip on the mountain town, pressing white silence against every rooftop and pine branch. Streetlights flickered under gusts of wind sharp enough to sting the lungs, and the roads were empty except for a single pickup rumbling through the storm. Inside sat Noah Carter, a 40-year-old Navy SEAL whose silhouette alone suggested discipline carved from years of conflict. His shoulders were broad beneath a navy winter coat, the fabric stretched across a frame built from endurance rather than vanity. His jaw was square, lined with a neatly trimmed beard streaked with a few silver threads, marks of age, or perhaps the weight of things he carried. His eyes, a deep and steady brown, shifted between warmth and something sharper whenever memory brushed against them. The war had not broken him, but it had left seams, quiet lines that pulsed whenever the world went too still. Even now, the storm outside seemed easier to face than the soft moments of silence inside his own head. Beside him sat Kaiser, his 5-year-old German Shepherd. The dog's coat was a striking blend of black and tan, muscles rippling beneath the harness labeled clearly in white letters. Service dog, do not pet. Kaiser held himself with the calm authority of a seasoned working dog. His ears were sharp, his amber eyes alive with focus, and he showed a kind of disciplined patience that echoed Noah's own restraint. Yet there was a softness too, an unspoken bond that often steadied the man more than any spoken reassurance could. Noah had planned only to pass through Silver Ridge before heading back to base. But as the storm thickened into a blinding curtain, he eased the truck to a stop beside Eli's Market, a small grocery store whose red neon sign flickered as if fighting for breath. The place looked deserted. Snow piled along the sidewalk, muting every sound. The wind struck the truck again, rattling the frame. Kaiser lifted his head. A low growl vibrated through his chest, soft, controlled, but unmistakably urgent. Noah frowned. "What is it, boy?" Kaiser did not look at Noah. His gaze locked toward the narrow alley beside the market, as if something invisible tugged at his instincts. The growl faded, replaced by a tense stillness Noah had learned to trust in combat zones. He cut the engine. The sudden silence felt heavier than the storm. For a moment, Noah sat there, the old ache in his left knee pulsing, a reminder of an explosion years ago that had nearly cost him his mobility. The injury had never quite healed, leaving a stiff, cautious rhythm to his movement. Some nights he felt it more sharply, as if the cold could reach into the past and pull the pain forward. Tonight was one of those nights. He exhaled, braced himself, and opened the door. The storm greeted him like a living creature. Wind slashed across his face and shoved at his coat as if trying to force him back inside. Snow battered the ground, swirling in frantic patterns beneath the street lamp. Kaiser leapt down after him, paws sinking into the drifts. Then Noah heard it, a sound thin as a hairline crack, a whimper, barely audible over the wind, yet unmistakably alive. He moved toward the alley, his boots crunching through the snow. The air grew colder between the brick walls, funneling the storm into a sharp tunnel of ice. The dim streetlight behind him flickered, stretching his shadow across the ground. Another whimper, this one weaker. Noah's pulse tightened. Kaiser pressed close to his side, not out of fear but readiness, the kind he displayed when sweeping unstable terrain overseas. The dog's breath steamed in short bursts as they reached the bend in the alley. A tipped wooden crate lay half buried in snow. Something shifted inside it. Noah crouched, ignoring the pull in his damaged knee. He brushed aside the gathered snow, revealing two small shapes curled together, German Shepherd puppies, no more than 6 or 7 weeks old. Their fur, once fluffy, clung to their ribs in soaked patches. Their bellies were sunken, their tiny bodies trembling with the last threads of warmth they could cling to. One puppy lifted its head just enough to lick at the falling snowflakes, a weak instinct searching for moisture. The other didn't move at all, only shivered faintly, as if trapped between staying alive and letting go. Noah's breath hitched, not from fear, but recognition. He had seen this look before, on battlefields, in villages caught between forces, in the eyes of soldiers who had run out of strength, fragile, defenseless, waiting for someone stronger to decide whether they lived another minute. Wind blasted through the alley, forcing Noah to shield the crate with his body. Snow gathered on his shoulders, melted into his beard. Kaiser leaned forward, sniffing the puppies gently, then stepped back and barked, a single sharp note, not aggressive but alarming, as if saying, "Now, hurry!" The storm roared overhead, drowning the world in white. Noah touched one of the puppies. It felt frighteningly cold. He swallowed hard. The night was collapsing fast. The storm was worsening, the puppies were fading, and out there in the whipping dark, even Kaiser's steady bark felt too small against the weight of time slipping away. No one knew, and Noah himself could not be sure, whether he and Kaiser had arrived soon enough to save the two tiny lives trembling on the edge of the snowstorm. The tracks of abandonment and the woman who heard the night snow spiraled harder through the alley, weaving itself into a thick curtain that blurred the edges of everything Noah could see. The wind howled between the brick walls like a creature hunting for warmth, and the faint whimpers of the puppies trembled against his gloves. Kaiser stood taut beside him, breath steaming in sharp bursts, his ears pinned forward as if analyzing every shift of the storm. Noah adjusted his grip on the two fragile bodies. Their fur was icy to the touch. Their ribs rose in shallow, frightened breaths. He glanced down and noticed something he had missed in the chaos. A trail of footprints, partly filled with snow, led away from the crate and out toward the main street. The steps were uneven, staggered, as if the person who left them behind had hesitated or changed direction halfway through. Someone had abandoned the puppies deliberately, and recently. Noah's jaw tightened. Something old and familiar stirred in his chest, the instinct that rose when he saw harm done to the weak. His heart beat harder, a quiet anger threading through the calm he tried to maintain. He followed the prince a few steps, Kaiser moving at his heel. The storm erased parts of the trail, but the direction was clear. Whoever left the pups had escaped into the blizzard before the cold claimed them too. Then, a voice drifted through the wind. "Is someone there? I heard crying." The tone was warm but cautious, carrying a tremble shaped by the storm. Noah turned toward the entrance of the alley. A woman moved through the swirling snow, shielding her face with one hand. She stepped closer, and the street lamp above finally revealed her features. Mia Turner, a woman of about 32, stood with a wool hat pressed low over dark auburn hair. She was slender, of medium height, wrapped tightly in a gray winter coat 2 sizes too thin for the cold. Her skin was pale from the biting wind, and her cheeks were flushed red in a way that hinted she wasn't used to facing the storms without preparation. A knitted scarf, frayed at the ends, was looped around her neck, shaking slightly with each gust. Her eyes, large and brown with faint gold rings around the iris, held an earnest, almost tender alertness. She carried herself with a sort of careful bravery, like someone who had seen enough cruelty to know danger existed, but enough kindness to believe she should step forward anyway. Kaiser growled low, taking an instinctive step in front of Noah. Mia stopped instantly, hands raised in peace. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." She blinked through the snowflakes, trying to distinguish shapes in the dark. "I work at the Silver Ridge Animal Rescue Center. I thought I heard something suffering." Her voice trembled not from fear, but from concern, a concern so genuine it softened the edge of the wind around them. Noah shifted, slightly, letting the faint lamplight fall on the 2 puppies curled in his arms. Mia's breath caught. "Oh no." Her expression changed, tightening as if someone had tugged at a hidden thread of pain. "They won't make it through the night without heat. Their temperatures must be dangerously low already." Another blast of wind hit them, almost lifting the snow straight off the ground. Lights across the street flickered once, twice, then died completely. The town fell into a dim, ghostly hush. "The power's out," Mia murmured, hugging her arms close to her body. "It happens often in storms this bad." Noah scanned the street. Everything beyond the alley had faded into swirling white. Emergency crews wouldn't reach this part of Silver Ridge for hours. Roads would be shut. The temperature was dropping by the minute. A metallic creak echoed above them. The market sign flickered again, then turned dark. The storm had swallowed the town whole. Kaiser leaned in, nudging one of the puppies gently. A soft whine escaped him, low and yearning. Noah felt the tremor beneath his gloves, the weaker pup's breath thinning, fluttering like a candle on the verge of blowing out. He looked up at Mia. "We need shelter," he said. His voice was steady, but the urgency pulsed beneath it. Mia nodded quickly. "There's a community center on Birch Avenue, but that road's already blocked by fallen trees. The rescue center has emergency generators, but it's 2 miles uphill through open roads." She stopped, her breath frosting. They wouldn't survive that far. Another gust screamed through the alley. Snow stung their faces. Windows rattled. Somewhere far off, something heavy collapsed with a resonant thud. Mia stepped closer, her expression stricken. "There has to be somewhere, anywhere, we can get heat into their bodies." Noah exhaled, steadying the pups against his chest. His mind sifted through maps, through instincts sharpened by years of evacuations under fire. He glanced at Kaiser. The dog met his eyes, amber gaze unwavering, as if saying he would follow wherever Noah led. Then he remembered the outskirts of town, a line of old seasonal cabins, some abandoned but still standing, close enough to reach, maybe insulated enough to hold warmth if he could start a fire. "We get them inside," Noah said firmly. "A temporary shelter, something close." Mia looked at him, her eyes wide but hopeful. "I know a place, an old cabin. My family used it years ago. It's small, but the fireplace still works." The puppies shuddered again. Kaiser stepped forward, as if urging them on. Noah tightened his hold on the fading warmth in his arms. The storm roared overhead, drowning out everything except the sound of their breaths and the frantic beat of urgency. They had one choice, and very little time. With the puppies weakening, the wind rising, and the streets disappearing under white, Noah nodded toward the far edge of the town. "Show the way," he said. Mia turned into the storm. Noah followed. Kaiser pressed close beside him. No one knew, and none of them could be certain, whether they would reach the cabin soon enough to pull the 2 little lives back from the brink. The abandoned cabin and the shadow lost in the storm. The wind battered the hillside as Noah, Mia, and Kaiser pushed through knee-deep snow toward the cabin. The structure appeared slowly through the whiteout, its roof sagging under the weight of winter, its windows clouded by frost as if the building itself were holding its breath. A single pine tree leaned crookedly beside it, branches swaying like a warning hand. Mia stopped just short of the porch, her breath trembling in the air. "This was my family's," she murmured. "We stopped coming after my mother passed. No one's been here in years." Her voice thinned with memory. Noah glanced at her. She looked small in the storm, wrapped in her worn gray coat, auburn hair spilling from beneath her hat, but her posture remained unshaken. She was frightened, yes, but she moved with a quiet courage that held steady, even as the snow whipped around them. Kaiser stepped ahead, sniffing the steps, ensuring no threat waited inside. Inside the cabin, the cold struck them like a wall. The air was stale, almost brittle. A thin layer of frost rimed the edges of the old wooden table and the stone fireplace. Noah lowered the 2 puppies onto a dusty blanket, their bodies limp with exhaustion. He moved with precision, seal instincts adapting seamlessly to the forgotten room. He knelt by the hearth, gathered old logs stacked in a leaning crate, and struck the first spark. The flame caught slowly, flickering weakly before growing into a warm orange glow that pushed shadows from the walls. Mia knelt beside the puppies, her eyes glistening at the sight of their fragile bodies. "They're so cold," she whispered, touching one gently. "Their paws, they barely react." Noah joined her, rolling up the sleeves of his coat. "They're not gone, not yet." Kaiser lay down beside them, curling his strong frame protectively around the blanket. His chest rose steadily, sharing heat, and one of the puppies shuddered as sensation began to return. His amber eyes flickered with purpose. A working dog, but also something more, a sentinel guarding the smallest soldiers of the night. Minutes stretched, the fire grew, warmth edged back into the room like a timid guest. Then, a faint sound scraped across the outside wall. Mia stiffened. What was that? Noah raised a hand for silence. Another noise followed, a dragging step, uneven and labored. Snow crunched under a heavy weight. Kaiser rose abruptly, every muscle taut, the ridge of fur along his spine rising like a storm crest. A figure swayed past the frosted window, not a shadow, a person. Noah stood, moving quietly to the door. His hand hovered over the handle, but before he could brace it shut, the latch jerked violently. The door burst inward. A man stumbled into the cabin, collapsing against the threshold. He was gaunt, nearly skeletal beneath a soaked canvas coat ripped at the shoulders. His face was grayish, from cold, cheekbones sharp enough to cast shadows, and his beard, patchy and unkempt, clung to skin that trembled uncontrollably. Snow caked the cuffs of his pants. His boots were mismatched, one leather, one rubber, both splitting at the seams. His eyes, a washed-out blue, darted wildly between Noah and Mia before sinking toward the floor. Kaiser positioned himself between the stranger and the puppies, issuing a low, warning growl. The man lifted a shaking hand. Don't hurt me," he rasped. His voice sounded hollow, as if he hadn't used it in days. I saw the light. I thought maybe someone could help." He swayed, catching himself weakly against the wall. Mia rose slowly, her face softening despite her fear. "Sir, are you hurt?" "You're freezing." The man shook his head, his breath hitching. "No, not me. Not just me." His gaze fell toward the blanket where the puppies lay. "I came because of them." Noah's eyes narrowed. "You know these puppies?" The man nodded once, a brittle movement. "I did something terrible," he whispered. "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean—" His words broke apart, swallowed by a harsh cough. Something slid from his coat pocket and clattered onto the floor. A small, faded puppy collar, fabric frayed, once red, but now washed into muddy pink. The metal tag was scratched nearly blank, except for a faint stamped letter H. Mia covered her mouth. "Oh no." The man sagged to his knees. "I tried to keep them, but when the storm came, I couldn't feed myself. I panicked. I left them behind the market, thinking someone kind would find them." His voice cracked into a sob. "But the cold came faster, and when I realized what I'd done, when I sobered up, I went back. They were gone. I followed tracks in the snow, and now—" Noah watched him closely. The man was not malicious. He was broken. Starvation, cold, regret, they carved themselves into the angles of his face. Noah had seen this kind of collapse before, in war zones and refugee camps. People who made terrible choices because life had pushed them past their limits. Mia stepped closer, her expression torn between sorrow and concern. "What's your name?" The man swallowed. "Harold," he whispered. "Harold Briggs." His shoulders shook violently now, not from cold alone, but from guilt. "I'm so sorry," he choked. "Please, don't let them die because of me." Noah exchanged a glance with Mia. The fire crackled softly. Kaiser's breathing steadied the air around them. The puppies stirred weakly, one letting out the faintest squeak. And Noah knew. Their night was far from over. Harold Briggs had brought not just a confession into the cabin, but a responsibility none of them could walk away from. Truth in the storm and a race against time. The cabin shook as if the storm were trying to pry it off the mountain. Wind lashed the walls with a force that made every board groan. Snowflakes, driven like needles, forced their way through gaps around the window frames. The fire that Noah had coaxed to life sputtered under a draft, shrinking into a trembling glow. Harold Briggs sat slumped near the hearth, his thin frame wrapped in a threadbare coat that had long since lost its warmth. Beneath the grime and exhaustion, he was a man whose face carried the hollows of grief, cheekbones sharp, eyes reddened by more than wind. His hands trembled as he held them toward the fire, fingers crooked as if constantly apologizing for something unseen. Mia knelt beside the puppies again. The stronger one twitched, its ears giving a faint flicker. The smaller one breathed in a shallow rhythm that frightened her more than she admitted. She pressed her palm lightly against its chest, hoping warmth alone could summon life back into the tiny body. Noah watched her, silently calculating. The storm was worsening. The roof creaked under heavy snow. The temperature, even with the fire, was dropping. He crossed the room to Harold, who sat with his head proud and eyes fixed on the frayed collar lying on the floor. "When my wife died," Harold said suddenly, voice cracking, "I kept the pups because they were the last thing she gave me. I wanted to protect them, but life got too hard. He swallowed, the motion ragged. When the storm hit and I had nothing left for them, I panicked. I thought someone kinder might find them. He squeezed his eyes shut. I never meant to leave them to die. Noah's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. He could sense Mia's heart softening. She had always been the kind of person who listened before judging. Yet he also sensed Kaiser standing behind him, watchful, reading every shift in Harold's posture. Kaiser moved closer to the pups, nudging the blanket. His amber eyes blinked slowly with a steadying calm, but the calm in the room shattered when a violent gust slammed against the cabin. Something above tore with a sickening crack. Snow spilled from a ripped seam in the roof, scattering across the floor like powdered glass. Mia gasped. The puppies whimpered. The fire nearly died. "We're losing heat fast," Noah said, already pulling on his gloves. Mia looked up, fear flickering across her eyes. "Noah, we can't go out in this. The storm's going to take the roof down," he replied. "We don't have a choice." Harold stared at the floor. "This is my fault. All of it." Noah crouched beside him, gripping his shoulder with a firmness that was almost grounding. "What you do now matters more than what you did before." Harold blinked, stunned by the unexpected mercy. Then another crack echoed through the rafters. That decided everything. "Get the pups!" "Wrapped tight," Noah said. "We head for the veterinary clinic." Mia nodded, pulling off her scarf and gently folding it into a sling for the smaller puppy. She lifted the fragile creature with care, holding it close to her chest to give it whatever warmth her body could spare. The stronger puppy Noah tucked inside his coat. Its tiny heartbeat fluttered against his ribs. Kaiser moved to the door, ears alert, body braced for the storm. Noah positioned himself under Harold's arm. "You can walk a bit?" Harold shook his head weakly. "Not far." "Then lean on me." When they opened the door, the wind ripped it from Noah's grip and slammed it against the wall. Snow surged inside, stinging their exposed skin. The world outside was nearly invisible, just shifting white and the sound of nature roaring in fury. Kaiser leapt ahead, barking once to signal the path. Noah half-carried Harold into the storm. The man was lighter than he looked, his frame depleted from days of cold and hunger. Mia walked behind them, clutching the puppy beneath her coat, her boots slipping on ice hidden under fresh snow. They fought their way down the trail. Snow whipped into their faces. Darkness coiled around them. Halfway across the small wooden bridge, a gut-wrenching crack split the air. One of the supporting planks gave way, plunging into the ravine below with a hollow thud. Noah froze, his boot inches from the break. Kaiser snapped his head back and barked, sharp, urgent, commanding. Noah jerked backward just as the next plank sagged under the weight of snow. If he had taken one more step, Mia gasped behind him. Harold clung to Noah with all the strength his frail body could muster. "We need another route," Noah said. "Fast." They backtracked, snow already filling their footprints. Kaiser led them through a narrow stand of pines, weaving between branches bent low under the storm's assault. Their breath rose in fierce clouds, their steps heavy and uneven. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then, a glow, faint, golden, flickering through the blizzard. Mia nearly sobbed in relief. "The clinic, that has to be it." The veterinary clinic sat at the edge of town, its emergency generator barely keeping the porch light alive. But to Noah, it looked like salvation carved out of the storm. They pushed toward the door, cold, shaking, exhausted, but alive. Behind them, the wind swallowed the bridge. Ahead, hope waited in a pool of warm yellow light. And for the first time that night, Noah allowed himself to believe the puppies might live to see morning. Winter's thaw, and the place where no soul is left behind. The storm had broken hours before dawn, leaving Silver Ridge wrapped in a pale, trembling silence. Frost clung to the clinic windows like delicate lace, and the first fragile sunlight stretched over the mountains, softening the sharp edges of the bitter night. Inside the veterinary clinic, warmth pulsed gently from the radiators. The two rescued puppies lay in separate padded crates, each wrapped in small fleece blankets. Their breathing, once thin and ragged, had grown steadier. Tiny chests lifted and fell, in a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat returning to the world. Dr. Evelyn Hart moved quietly around the room, her practiced hands checking monitors and adjusting IV lines. She was in her mid-40s, tall and willowy, with copper-blonde hair tied into a low braid. Her skin was pale from years of working indoors, and fine creases lined her eyes, not from age but from constant worry for creatures that could not speak for themselves. Though gentle, her presence carried a firm steadiness, a woman who had learned long ago to hold herself together when others unraveled. She turned toward Noah, who had not moved from his place beside the crates. "You can breathe now," Evelyn said softly. "They're out of danger." Noah exhaled, shoulders dropping, the stiffness of long hours unwinding. The exhaustion on his face made the angles sharper, the faint scars along his jaw more pronounced. He brushed a thumb slowly across the stronger puppy's head, feeling the warmth under his fingertips. Kaiser lay beside him, body curved protectively around Noah's boots. Frost still clung to the thick fur along his back, the remnants of the storm he had charged into without hesitation. His ears flicked as Evelyn approached, but he remained calm, trustworthy, resolute, the kind of dog forged not only by training, but by loyalty that lived bone deep. Mia stood near the counter, wrapping her hands around a mug of tea Evelyn had given her. Her cheeks were flushed, her dark lashes still sprinkled with melting snow. She watched Noah with a softness that she didn't quite realize showed on her face. "I knew you'd get them through," she murmured. Noah looked up, brow lifting slightly. "You had more faith in me than I did." "Not faith," she said. "Instinct." Before he could respond, a hoarse voice rose from the cot near the wall. Harold Briggs, freshly bandaged and wrapped in a wool blanket, pushed himself upright. His face looked clearer now, still worn, but no longer swallowed by despair. He was a slender man with graying hair that hung in uneven strands around a narrow, weather-creased face. Life had carved deep grooves on him, but his eyes held something new, a trembling desire to make things right. "Are they?" he began. Mia stepped closer. "They're alive, Harold?" He pressed a shaking hand to his mouth, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. "I don't deserve a second chance," he whispered, "but they do. And I want to fix what I broke, whatever it takes." Evelyn nodded approvingly. "Then start by helping care for them. Healing isn't only for the wounded." A quiet settled in the room, warm, fragile, hopeful. Winter loosened its grip slowly over the next month. What had been a landscape of white and steel softened into slate-blue mornings and afternoons dotted with melting icicles. Silver Ridge began to breathe again. And in a small clearing at the outskirts of town, the old abandoned cabin stood transformed. Noah hammered a wooden plank into place while Harold held it steady. The older man's hands were steadier these days, his eyes brighter. His steps still faltered on rough ground, but his presence no longer carried the weight of defeat. Mia knelt in the snow beside a stack of blankets and food containers, sorting supplies with her usual quiet dedication. A loose strand of chestnut hair brushed her cheek as she worked. Kaiser supervised with solemn attention, pacing the perimeter like a commander inspecting a new base. The two puppies, now named Aspen and Flint, bounded after him with unsteady enthusiasm. Aspen had grown into a bold little creature with dark eyes and a feisty spirit, while Flint remained sweet-natured, lighter in color, always trying to catch up to his siblings. Noah paused to watch them tumble over each other. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "They're going to run this place before we do," Mia teased. "Wouldn't be the worst thing," Noah replied. Harold hammered the final nail into a carved wooden sign and stepped back. The letters glowed warmly in the afternoon sun. "Bright Paw Haven where no soul is left behind." Mia touched the wood gently. "It feels right." Noah rested a hand on Kaiser's head. "We made it real." Kaiser lifted his gaze toward Noah, steady, grounding, warm, the same look he had given him in a dozen war zones, the look that said we survived the impossible together. But today, for the first time, that look meant something new, not survival, belonging. Snowflakes drifted softly from a clearing sky, winter's last whisper, as the puppies circled Kaiser and nipped at his tail. He didn't scold them, he simply let them climb across his back, anchoring them in the world the only way he knew how. Mia stepped beside Noah and watched the dogs run across the yard. "Feels like a beginning," she said. "It is," Noah answered quietly. Kaiser leaned into his side. A warrior's reassurance, a friend's reminder, a promise. Winter was ending, and for the first time in years, Noah felt the thaw inside himself. In the quiet after winter's storm, Bright Paw Haven stood as more than a shelter. It became a reminder that miracles rarely arrive with thunder or shining wings. Most of the time, they come softly, in a soldier who stops on a lonely road, in a loyal dog who refuses to leave anyone behind, in two fragile lives that find warmth just when hope seems lost. Some say it was luck, but those who have lived long enough know better. There are moments when the right people cross our path, the right hearts open, the right hands reach out, and it feels as if God Himself leaned gently into our story. Maybe the true miracle is this: no matter how cold the world becomes, God still stirs compassion inside ordinary people, guiding them to light the fires that keep others alive. And maybe, in ways small and unseen, He is still whispering to each of us, do not walk past the suffering. Do not let the forgotten stay forgotten. I am still working through you. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still wins, faith still comforts, and miracles still walk quietly among us. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because it brings joy to see how far these stories travel. And if you believe in protecting the small, the weak, and the souls God places in our path, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and join us for the next story of hope and grace. May God bless you and every creature under your care with warmth, faith, and gentle protection in all the days ahead.